So that's how I went to sleep every night. Anyway, the school was really great. We got to go to the chocolate factory. We got to pick narcissus and above Lausanne in the spring.
Wow.
And we had 6 French classes a day.
Wow.
So I finally did learn French. But it was hard because there was so much English. And there were 2 English girls, and they said, "You don't speak English, you speak American." We were all very embarrassed, but anyway. But then there was this Dutch girl who spoke Dutch, German, Italian, English, and French, and she was 15 years old. I mean, I think she was a linguist, don't you think?
I've been in Europe a few times, and I get the idea there's a lot of those out there in Europe that speak all these languages, and how this sort of relative poverty we have in the U.S. But
I was really happy to finally learn to speak French, and Peter. When I met Peter, it was one of his requirements that.
And it gave you another view on America too, being over there.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, because in 1958, you did things the American way. That was how it was done. We were after the war, and everybody, everybody was the ugly American, didn't speak French, and they just yelled at people in Paris because they didn't speak English. But anyway, I learned that there was, the American way was one way of doing things. Only one way, and there were many other ways of doing exactly the same thing that might have been actually even more interesting and better. And I had great respect for Madame Dédy, who was the director of this school, and she had to ride herd on all these girls and make sure nothing terrible happened to them, because there was another school, Le Rosé, which was next door, and it had a few princes and people like that. We didn't have any princesses or anybody like that. We were much more ordinary, but she had to keep us apart, because we were, the old raging hormones department when you're 16, 17. So anyway, I stayed there till I was 17, and by the time I got back to the States, I was a total snob. Because I'd been in Europe, and all these beautiful old buildings, and I would look around and say, "Oh, that building's only 200 years old." It took me about a year to get over that, being a snob.
Well, from there, why don't you take us to RISD and your experiences at RISD?
Well, the good thing about going to school outside of Boston, I went to Pine Manor Junior College, and it was a 2-year school at the time. And I had an instructor who had graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design and Sculpture, and I had an elective. And this is just, I'd made things my whole life. I didn't know you could be an artist as a career. I just did it, So anyway, I took Mr. Lavin's class, and it was supposed to be a 2-dimensional class. And it turned very quickly into a 3-dimensional class.
For you or for everybody?
For everybody.
Oh.
Yeah, it just turned, because he was a sculptor, so he just made it into a 3-dimensional class. So we had this project where we built a figure of a mother and child. We started with hard chicken wire, and then plaster gauze, and then plaster, and then you file it down and deform it. And I was doing my work in the studio, and I realized Mr. Lavin was watching me like this, and I thought, uh-oh, and he went away, and a couple of weeks later he came back, and I realized he was watching me again, and I thought, oh my goodness, and he said, would you come in my office? I thought, oh dear, what have I done? He said, you should go to the Rhode Island School of Design. I said, what? I was 19. What did I know? Anyway, he said, well, I'll write your parents and tell them. I said, but my parents are in Tel Aviv. My father was working for the State Department at that time. He said, that's okay, just give me their address. Anyway, I ended up going to summer school. At that time, you had to go through this 6-week summer school. and it was like art boot camp.
I see.
You had 5 classes to do, and you could not go to sleep until you finished all your work. And it was just like I came out of that seeing differently. My perception was different after I went to this boot camp. And somehow, I don't know how, I got in. I really...
Well, the boot camp was Rhode Island School of Design boot camp?
No, it was a summer school.
Okay.
In order to get into winter school, you could have a PhD
see.
at Harvard, but you still had to go to this RISD summer school if you wanted to go there.
Okay.
And it's a very rigorous place. It's a marvelous school. I really wish that I could have stayed longer, because there were all sorts of things I wanted to do. I majored in sculpture, and I'm kind of a practical person, so I thought, well, you know, I'm not going to walk out of here and get a job as a sculptor. You know, that's just not going to happen. So I thought, well, what else could I do? So I went down to the industrial design department, and I looked around, and I thought, well, you know, maybe I could get a job if I knew how to do this from an industrial design point of view. And it was 1965. They didn't want any women in there. They didn't. And I didn't get in there, you know. They'd really discouraged me because I was female. It was before the women's movement, and I didn't know. I was still being very polite and unassertive.
Okay.
I had to learn that part.
So did I gather that you left Rhode Island School of Design without a degree? You left before you got a degree?
No, I did what, you know, a lot of people do. And my father used to say, sort of sneeringly, if you can do, if you can't, teach. So I went and got a teaching degree. At least I could earn a living, which I did.
So you got a teaching degree from some other school?
No, from RISD. The last year I went to the education department instead of the industrial design department.
But now I think I'm taking a lead from your book. It says that you found sculpture much to your liking somehow, and that developed somehow through this experience at Rhode Island School, maybe through that class that came before.
Yeah, right. Well, I just
somehow
always made things from the time I was really little.
Okay, so that goes way
My
back.
brother and I used to draw all the time, and we made stuffed animals, we made erector sets, we made, you know, I knitted, I made dolls, you know, I'm just always making something.
Okay.
And it was mostly three-dimensional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so we're in the mid-60s now. And so at what point do you become part of this group called Video Free X?
Freaks, video freaks.
Video Freaks.
Right.
And so, well, talk about that. That's
okay.
Sounds
That's
like
a really,
amazing.
yeah, that was really a really, as we used to say, a trip. Anyway, yes, I went to Manhattan. I thought I was going to get married, but that didn't work. But I ended up on the Upper East Side on 99th Street, and I went up with my little college degree, and I walked around Spanish Harlem to every school I could find, and finally I found a Catholic school that needed an art teacher. And then I found another Catholic school across town on the Upper West Side, at 89th or something. And so I got a job as a teaching art. That was my first job, teaching art. And then, let's see, what happened? I was still up there. I met a man through a friend by the name of David Court. And David Court had gone to Brandeis, and he in the theatrical department, and he was doing a job in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which was not gentrified at that time. Anyway, he had this video equipment, and so I got introduced to it. Now, I've had a camera in my hands since I was a child. You know, I've always taken photographs. But this was a different kind of thing, but it was images, it was just moving images. And so it seemed really natural to me. And then I went to see my grandfather in Michigan, and I looked at the news, and I said, Woodstock. Oh, I know David's there. I just know he's there.
David?
David Court, my boyfriend at that time. Okay. I said, I know he's there. So I got back to Manhattan. I said, were you at Woodstock? He said, yeah, it was great, man. And I met this guy named Perry Teasdale, this young guy with another video camera. And we videotaped behind the scenes at Woodstock. None of the music stuff, that was, that was being done. But we got behind the scenes, everybody was tripping their brains out on acid. And that's all got on tape and everything like that. And he said, oh, and by the way, Perry's going to come and live with us. I said, oh, really? Luckily, Perry Teasdale turned out to be a lovely young man. And the three of us, about 2 months later, decided to start a group called Video Freaks, Freex. And there's a document. You saw it, didn't you, Howard? Yeah. Pretty trippy.
Yeah, here comes video.
Here come the